Hi guys, my name is Sean. I'm a houseplant enthusiast from Jakarta, Indonesia. Welcome to today's video where I'm going to be sharing with you the basics of pests. The first thing that you need to know about pests is that every plant will definitely have pests. When you have plants in your home, it's only a matter of time. And the different species of pests depends on the species of plants that you have. Some pests are naturally drawn to specific species of plants, which we may get into later. But I don't know any houseplant parents that don't have pests in their houseplants or in their garden, because that is just something that we cannot avoid. So we have to learn to live with them. It's actually quite therapeutic if you learn how to control them and if you gain some confidence. It takes maybe killing a few plants and of course killing a lot of pests for you guys to know, what measures work for you guys, what ways of control works the best. But there are actually three basic components, and I will talk about two of them later with visuals, of course. Number one would be chemicals, and this is the most commonly used. And chemical pesticides are actually quite harmful for everybody, including the people living in the area. So, if you have pets or kids, of course, that's not really good. And when you have chemical pesticides, the water or whatever will leach into the ground and it will affect the ecosystem as well. Just keep that in mind. I'm not gonna poo-poo anyone that uses chemical pesticides because I know I do. So that is just a perfectly normal thing. And the one thing that I would say maybe is to keep your plants in smaller, tight pots so that you don't have a lot of soil where a lot of the pesticides are just going to be wasted. So that's one of the tips for that. And the second way of pest control would be natural means, and the only one that I can think of is neem oil. So that is an oil derived from the plant, which is a neem plant, and you just dilute it with water. Of course, I'm going to show you later how I do it, and it really works. You can either spray down the foliage with the neem oil solution, or you can just water the plant, drench it, because the neem oil will be absorbed by the roots into the leaves, and any pests that are feeding on the roots and the leaves of the plants or living in the soil, they will die. And neem oil basically alters their hormones. I'm not really sure the science behind it, but it causes them to die pretty painfully and slowly. But keep in mind, with both the chemical and neem oil, or natural means rather, way of pest control, they only kill the larvae in the adult stage, and they don't really kill the egg stage, because you have to consider that every pest has a life cycle. Usually it's about 14 days. So if you have killed the larvae and the adults, you may have more babies that hatch in about a week or 2 weeks time. So just keep that in mind. So you may have to repeat treatment often. The last way that you can control them, and unfortunately that is not available here in my region, would be biological control. And I know that that is a big thing if you're living in the West, where you're getting predatory insects that will feed on your pest. You just release them, you buy them, you release them, and then they will just do their own thing. Of course, in Indonesia, I think that would be a little bit of a controversy, because a lot of people here are very disgusted by pests. In fact, a lot of plant parents here don't even touch potting mix with their own hands. I don't know why. I think Indonesians in general, maybe it's the culture, we're a little bit cleaner or more mindful. So any little bugs that we see in the potting mix, people will just squeal and scream. But for me, I have to be honest with you. In the beginning, I was a little squeamish about seeing worms and bugs and such. But things got better as I became a more experienced plant parent. So now I just deal with it. I just take mealy bugs right off the plant. I just squish them, no problem, because they're a natural part of our ecosystem and they don't harm us. These pests are not dirty, they're not disgusting, they don't cause us disease or any harm. So I don't mind dealing with them. But that's from me experiencing a lot of plant care and experience. But generally speaking, biological control is the best way that you can control your pest population. And I'm not going to get into that in this episode because I'm not experienced, but there are a lot of YouTubers that will talk about that, so feel free to check those out if it's available in your region. Or if you are living here in Indonesia, or if you're living abroad, you have a biological pest control business, or you have an idea, talk to me. I would really love to be a partner somehow. I would love to be a platform to advocate for that, or maybe even become a business partner or an investor in that sense, because we do need that option. I think there's quite a lot of new plant parents here in Indonesia, and I'm sure some of us are open-minded to releasing ladybugs and lacewings around our collections and letting them help us take care of our pests. So The next thing that I want to talk about would be the type of pests, right? So I don't really know a lot about insect science, but generally speaking, I believe there are different species like the mites, there are aphids, and I believe the scale could be in the aphids family, but I could be wrong. But you actually need to know what species they are, because different kinds of biological controls, different types of pesticides, generally speaking, they do affect different types of pests. However, I would say that a lot of the pest control that I use here, whether it's the chemical Furadon or Curacron, which I use, I'm going to talk about that later in this video, or neem oil, all of these affect all the different species of pests that are common to our house. So generally, the pesticides that I'm going to show you at the end of this video is going to be great for all of these general varieties of pests. So here's some of the common pests and a little bit of their attributes that I have dealt with and a lot of you guys have DM'd me about. Number one, mealybugs. So they're usually these white fuzzy bugs. They move very slowly and they're usually brought there by ants because they can't really move that well. So if you see ants around your plants, usually there's mealybugs either on the leaves or in the roots. I have a video on the mealybugs which I'm gonna link up above, so if you want to see that. But mealybugs are actually quite easy. You can spray them down, you can pick them off with your hands. However, the difficult mealybugs are the ones that you see inside the roots. So those are the ones that we cannot see, but if you see that your plants are growing slowly or if there are ants crawling around the plant but you don't see any extra floral nectaries, you know that there's definitely mealybugs in the soil. Ooh, another thing about mealybugs is that they actually love Hoyas. They also love Sansevierias, Dracaenas, they love cacti and succulents, at least here in my climate. So they're naturally drawn to those, and usually they're also found in the new leaves. So yeah, that's how you find them. Mealybugs are not that hard because you can spot them quite easily. So this is a very stress-free pest to have around, I guess. And the next one would be spider mites, and this is actually quite dangerous and harmful because they can decimate your plant very quickly. They actually kill the plants rather quickly, while the other pests may actually be more salvageable, if you know what I mean. So spider mites, you can see from the leaves, you see tiny specks of like bite marks. That's when you know that the spider mites are there. Or if the plant is in decline suddenly, like very quickly, check the back of the leaves. Usually spider mites congregate at the back of the leaves. They're usually these tiny specks. I'm gonna deal with one of them later now with an alocasia later in this video, so you're gonna see that. But they're tiny specks of mites, and they do have this webbing, which is why they're called the spider mites, but they are not spiders by any means. So yeah, one way to find out is to check out the leaf surface for those tiny spots. And also if you have alocasias, because those are spider mites' best friends, or if you have heart-shaped leaf philodendrons like the verrucosum, that is also their favorite food. So if you have alocasias, 100% you will get spider mites. And spider mites actually do well mostly indoors. So if you have your plants growing outdoors, it is less likely for you to have spider mites, but of course you can still have them. So check your alocasias often, check your plants often. If you see those crazy dots, if you see something declining very quickly, check the back of the leaves because you will spot them. The next one would be scale, and those are armored pests. They don't really move much as well, and they also have a symbiotic relationship with ants because they do feed on plants, and usually scale like slow growing plants like your ficus and your Sansevierias or Dracaenas, and they will eat the plant material and then they will poop out the sugar material which the ants would feed on. So ants would actually put those scale up there and they would harvest their eggs and take care of their young. So they do have that symbiotic relationship in that sense. Scale is a little bit hard when they are a little bit younger or new. You can actually just gently wipe them off or even lightly use your fingernails to take them off. But if they have been on the plant for too long, it is almost impossible to get them off. They have this armor that is very difficult to penetrate, which is why they're called scale. And scale, you can also treat them the same way with neem oil or with the sprays that I'm going to discuss later. But you can also kill them with a little bit of alcohol. I hear that alcohol, when you dab them onto the leaf where the scale is sitting or the stem, they will cause the armor to explode, exposing the delicate inside of the animal and killing it. So, and one last thing would be soapy water. I hear that soapy water also causes the armor a lot of damage, so they will really succumb to that. So with scale, alcohol, soap, and neem oil also works, and also your chemical means. And the next one will be fungus gnats. I have a video on that, so do click on the link above if you want to see my fungus gnats video. Generally speaking, I've tried many things. There are many tips online because it is one of the most discussed pest online, because it affects so many of us. They are these little flying things and we think of them as mosquitoes. So when Asians talk about plants and mosquitoes around plants, they're actually really talking about fungus gnats, because mosquitoes don't have any business around our plants. It's fungus gnats that do. Fungus gnats don't really affect us, except that they do fly into our noses and ears sometimes, because they're always looking for dark and moist places to layer their eggs into. So fungus gnats is a sign that you're overwatering your plants, because they actually live on the top, 2 to 3 centimeters of your soil. They cannot live much further than that. And they do need fungus to thrive. Their babies feed on fungus. And fungus thrives when you have really damp organic potting mix. And one way they can eliminate fungus gnats is those means that we're going to discuss later with the neem oil or with the chemical means. But you can also put diatomaceous earth, which is this powder which is made of these fossilized remains of, I'm not going to get into that, but diatomaceous earth actually causes some damage. You do want to sprinkle it on the top of the dry soil, because when you have wet diatomaceous earth, it renders it useless. So what happens is that when fungus gnats are crawling over these white powdery substance, they're like glass to them. It'll cut up their bodies, so they will be in a lot of pain. They will not live very long when they are in contact with the diatomaceous earth, which is why people spread them on the top of the potting mix. I've actually seen them like kind of go up through the surface of the potting mix, and they just get so hard. They were just like be writhing and stuff like that. I actually witnessed that with my own eyes. I wish I filmed that, but I did not. And the diatomaceous earth actually is a very inefficient way of eliminating fungus gnats, only because, again, you cannot get the powder wet at all. Like the next time you water your plants, you may have to reapply the diatomaceous earth on it. And also it causes a lot of the powdery substance to be all over your space. It's not attractive at all. So with fungus gnats, the best way to deal with it is, number one, back off with watering. Let the topsoil dry out completely for a longer period of time that you are comfortable with, because generally speaking, plants can survive. Plants can experience a little bit of drought. And keep in mind, because they do live on the top portion of the soil, bottom watering them would be the best way. So when you bottom water your plants, so you just basically take a pot and you just put it in water, a little bit of water, and then you would just let the water, you would just let the potting mix suck up a little bit of water up, and then you would remove it. So then you have a dry top layer of the potting mix where the fungus gnats cannot even find, because again, they're looking for these damp, humid places to dive into and to lay eggs. So with no dry surface, you have no fungus gnats, and the larvae and eggs cannot survive in dry topsoil. So yeah, sorry. For more details, obviously, again, go to that fungus gnats video, because I find that it's definitely one of the most helpful videos out there, if I may say so myself. Bottom water your plants, let them dry out for fungus gnats. And you don't really have fungus gnats issues when you have them outdoors. Somehow a lot of the predators do come in and control the population really well. And there are other pests which we're not going to talk about here, like your snails, grasshoppers, and things like that. They do bite into the leaves really in a big way, like they would take a whole chunk out of your leaf overnight. But that's another video for another time. I haven't really figured out how to deal with them, except I'll just get more plants, because the more plants you have, the less likely they're going to be damaged. I need to outcompete their population by having more leaves. And I don't really mind it when they feed on my plants, because this is their home too, right? So we have to be mindful that these pests, they're just trying to find their place in this world, just like we are. They're trying to survive, and this world rightfully belongs to theirs as much as it does to ours. And when plants get eaten up, when leaves get eaten up, it'll grow back. You know, if you have active nodes, if you watch my propagation videos, you can propagate single nodes. You get many more plants. So be forgiving, be mindful, and just accept the fact that they're going to be pests around. And I'm going to show you real quickly the pest control videos after this. But just keep in mind, when you do these pest controls, you can treat them as a part of your plant care routine. You know, do it every month, every 3 months, depending on how big your collection is or how much time you have. Put on some good music. Believe me, it really helps when you have good music on, and you can just spend half a day, just go through your plants, check them, and treat them for pests. And once you have dealt with the pest, the next time you see those pests come back, whether it's the same species or different species, you have less anxiety. You'll be like, I know how to deal with that. You know, it's super easy. And what I'm going to show you later, actually, it looks a little bit complicated and all that, but when you get down to it, it literally takes like 15 minutes to get it done. So do it. Deal with your pests, accept them, know that you will have them, and yeah, just be a good plant parent. I mean, your plant will thank you for it. They will bounce back very quickly, as will show you later in this video, that the plants will appreciate it when you do treat them for pests. Welcome to today's video, where I'm going to be sharing you the different ways that I control pests and also eliminate them. Namely, there's actually two ways to get rid of them. One is by a neem oil spray that I'm going to show you in a bit, step by step. I also do use Furadan, and that's actually very controversial. We're going to get into that later as well. I guess the first thing we need to talk about is, how do we identify pests? There are a few visual cues, and number one, the most obvious one, is that the plant may just be in decline. It may look like it's suffering, and then it may also be stunted, as in it would not grow for a while. That's also a very good way to see it. Sometimes you can see the pest visually as well, like your mealybugs are very easy to spot. And spider mites are a little bit more difficult, but then you can also spot on the leaves the damage that are caused by spider mites. Even though spider mites live on the underside of the leaves, but they can cause some damage on the leaves that, again, you can identify very easily with experience. And one really cool way to identify pests would be to follow the ants. So if you have a lot of ants running around in the plant, and it is not caused by extrafloral nectaries, which I cover a lot in my channel. Extrafloral nectaries is this spots on the leaves that a lot of philodendrons have. So the philodendron actually produces sweet nectar out of the leaves and not the flower to attract the ants. So then the ants will feed on these nectars, and in exchange, the ants will protect the plant from pests. Alright, so this cocoa loba tree actually lives over there on that pot indoors. It gets excellent light, but the problem with plants when you keep them indoors is that they don't have any predators, so then their population would be unchecked and they will explode in growth. So that's a little bit of a risk with mealybugs. So what I did was that I saw a lot of ants here for a long time. You see the ants are congregating here, and it's feeding on the mealybugs poop. I don't know if the camera's going to focus. Hang on, let me bring it over. Yeah, see, they're all hanging out here. And one of the reasons why they're all hanging on this particular branch is because I took this plant out about a week ago and I procrastinated. I should have been filming back then, but I didn't. So what I did was I actually just sprayed the whole plant down with a jet stream of water wherever possible, wherever I see, usually on the new growth here on the edge. You would see, you just follow the ants and you will find them. And that's the scale as well, and some of the scale here can be peeled off easily by fingernails and some cannot. And here's the thing, I actually knocked a lot of them out already, and look at that, within about a week time all the growth point is activated. All of them are alive. Look at that, that's a new leaf. How cute is that? Look at the shiny. I love the cocoa loba tree, and the variegated one is actually on my wish list, and I hope I can get my hands on it. But that's scale. If you look at that, yeah, or mealybugs, I'm not sure. There's both of them in this plant. So yeah, this plant was suffering. I did not treat it yet, disclaimer. I just basically, again, hose it down, and when I hose it down, I can see that the scale and the mealybugs are actually knocked off the leaves. So I would say that the number one defense that you should do is knock your pest with a jet stream of water, whether you're in the shower or if you have a hose. Mealybugs, spider mites, and scale is a little bit harder because scale do attach themselves quite well onto the plants, they're a little bit more difficult. That's why we're going to go ahead with today's treatment. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is create a neem oil solution. I'm going to show you how I do it, and this is very, very important, and this works against all types of pests, whether it's aphids or mites. They work really well. So what I did was actually use some of my soap here. This is my insecticidal bar soap. I just took a piece of scissors and I took a few pieces out, and as you can see, the few pieces are comfortably laying in there. Also, alternately, you can use a little bit of dish liquid. This is powered by plants, so I'm guessing it's good for plants maybe. Yeah, just put a few drops of dish washing liquid. I never ever measure anything, so do not ask me for measurements because I'm just not that kind of person. So I have this in a 2 milliliter sprayer here, which I prepared, and I'm just gonna pour some neem oil here, and let me show you how much I actually pour. I always eyeball it like that. That's actually a little bit too much, but oh well, that's okay. If it's too much, I'll show you how I can deal with this later, because there's ways to handle that. And what I do is normally just mix it with water, and then I will mix it in this bottle before pouring into here, so I can actually control the amount. So because I pour too much oil here, I may actually do 2 batches here, which means that this will have enough to fill in 2 of these. I don't know if I'll show you what they mean later. But I want to show you another thing that's optional. This is Curacron, and this is actually chemical, while that is actually natural. So I'm going to talk about neem oil in another episode because there's a lot of things to talk about, but this is actually a little bit better for the environment and for your skin and all that. And Curacron is actually very, very, very toxic. And when you deal with this, you're supposed to wear gloves, and I'm not gonna wear gloves. I'm sorry, because I'm filming, so I need 2 hands. But you should wear gloves and goggles with Curacron. You do not want to get this in your eye. You will get blinded. So this is optional. You can just go with this and leave it alone if you want to go all natural. But for me, because I'm doing this tutorial, and I only use this for very, very severely pest infested plants, I mix 2. I mix both natural, which is the neem oil, and also the Curacron. I probably am going to only add about 20 drops or so. And that's done. So then next thing I want to do is add some water. And it's already smelling really bad here. And I don't want to fill it all the way to the top, because, let me show you what I'm going to do. Sorry, I'm doing this with one hand. This is so difficult. I'm going to be shaking this. So this is why I have this in this bottle instead of having it directly here, which I already filled in with a little bit of water. So my pest treatment is always easy. I don't measure anything, and I'm so sorry. If you're the kind of person that measures, follow the instruction. Follow, it will say, or ask the seller how much ratio to put in, because I'm not gonna go into that. So don't follow me. And I'm gonna pour about half of these because we said that there were too many oils before. I'd rather have a diluted but more frequent treatment than having a very heavy treatment for my pest, because if you have too heavy of a treatment, you don't dilute it enough, this will burn the leaves, and neem oil can also burn the leaves. And think about neem oil, please use it during sundown. This is 5:15 p.m. right now, so it is sundown, because neem oil is photosensitive, and we're gonna get into that in another episode. And you don't want to apply this in daytime, basically. Never ever apply neem oil when the sun is up. All right, so I'm going to be closing this, and then we're gonna bring this over to the bad boy over there, and we're gonna spray it down. I'm just gonna quickly show you how I do it. I'm not gonna show you how I spray these down because I do need both hands to do it, but the things that when you spray them down, look at that. Die! When you do it, you make sure that you get both the underside and the top side of the leaves. So I may have to use 2 of these because this is a pretty big plant, and I do wanna give this a very thorough rinse today. Ooh, and before I let you go, I mentioned this before, but I want to stress this one more time. This plant did not put out leaves for about 6 months because I guess it was infested by the pest. And as you can see, everything is growing. Every possible branch is putting out a growth point. So pest control, definitely you must do it. It's a must. Check your plants. Check them for pests and treat them. It's not stressful, it's not difficult. It is part of plant care, It's very normal and everyone has it. There's nothing to be embarrassed. So yeah, good luck. Okay, hang on. So I forgot one really important point. And that this is leftover that we had before. I'm just gonna put it in my watering can here with water in it. And I'm just gonna water that plant with it. So what happens is that this neem oil, actually it's called the neem oil soil drench, can be absorbed by the roots, and then the neem oil, the essential oils, will be taken up to the leaves. So when the pests feed on the leaves, they will die. So this is another way to deliver neem oil into the plants and into the bellies of the pests. It is actually 1 week later, and all the leaves that were red and tiny before has hardened, and they've become mature sized leaves, which is very interesting, very cute. That's a new growth point there. And I can see that some of the baby leaves are also growing out of it. So I really don't mind pests. Look at this growth point here. This is so cute. So I really don't mind pests at all, because pests, really, if you treat it, the plant will bounce back rather quickly. So I'm really excited whenever I see pests and I treat it. All right, so the next pest control measure that I use is actually the carbofuran. This is not the bottle it came with, this is from a juice. But I'm gonna insert a picture of what the packaging looks like. It comes in under many brands, but the one that I have is branded under Furadan. And it's basically these purple granules. I believe they are called Sparkle G as well, somewhere else. I'm not sure if they're the same thing. I just heard people commenting on these. But the reason why I wanted to show this, I wanted to be completely honest with you, is that this is a very strong pesticide. In fact, I want to go as far as say that this is a biocide. It kills every living thing except plants, of course. It kills a lot of the beneficial pests and also the animals that are feeding on these pests, like your birds. So this is really bad for the ecosystem, and it's also full of chemicals, which is really toxic for us if you have these leach into our water system. And we ended up drinking this by accident. This is really toxic for us. This is not good stuff. But a lot of people do use it, even agriculturally, they do use it. But again, it's banned in many developed nations. And yeah, I do use this to some degree. And what happens is that when you use this on the plants, this is why I keep my plants in small pots where possible, so I don't have to use a lot of this stuff. I want to be very mindful about using these. I just want to sprinkle it on the top of the soil, kind of like this. I don't measure anything. Again, I'm not a measurer, but this is a rather big pot, so I'm going to use a little bit more. Of course, on small pots, I only want to use a little bit. So what happens in here is that whenever we water the plant, the water would dissolve some of these and it will leach into the soil, and then the plant will take it up through the roots. The plant will take up the chemicals, and then it will distribute it to the leaves. And any pests that are feeding on the stem or on the leaves or on the roots of the plant will die from this. So this is very potent stuff again, and I do use this very mindfully. I don't use this, I try to avoid this where possible, but in this case this is pretty severe, so I do use this. And in some of my more expensive propagated plants, I do use it as well. So in today's video I've showed you basically two ways. One is the neem oil, which is a natural way of doing things, but again, neem oil is also banned in certain countries. Just so you know, it's banned in the UK as far as I know. And then there's the chemical means, which is this Furadan, and of course there's another one which we used earlier, Curacron, which I do mix with my neem oil in this kind of extreme cases, but generally speaking I just use neem oil. So it's really up to you what method you choose, and in fact in your local area the regulations may be different, and what the kinds of pest control measures are going to be different. But do check with your plant stores or your garden supply stores, see what they recommend. But both the Furadan here and the neem oil that I showed you earlier is very good for all sorts of pests, meaning all species, like your aphids, your mites, and things like that. So I also do have a soap that I created for plants, and it's got insecticidal properties. And I'm going to link that video up above because that's a whole new video on its own. And it's not available in your country, most likely, if you don't live in Indonesia, because I can't ship them without an export permit. So only Indonesians can get those soaps, unfortunately. And people have been having really good success with it. So basically, you would just, it's a bar soap, of course, so it's plastic-free delivery. So you would lather up the soap, and then you would take the foam and just clean the leaves with it. So any pests that are in contact with it, because it contains neem and coconut oil, any pests will also die from being in contact with that soap. So that's really good stuff. And again, do check out that video if you have the chance. So yeah, this is basically how I control all my pest issues. I don't really do anything else. And I really don't mind having pests around because they're part of the ecosystem. They're definitely challenging, but then if you get used to it, it's not a problem. So here's an alocasia, and they are the spider mites' favorite food. Look at all these colony of spider mites. I don't know if you can see them well. They're just moving around. So there are these teeny tiny dots that move around. Look at it, it's like a floating highway. How cute. Usually they live on the underside of the leaves. As you can see here, there's so many of them. Look at how, that's really pretty. It looks like the galaxy. But they usually live on the underside of the leaves, and I don't want to contaminate myself. After I touch this leaf, I definitely have to wash my hands because I may get some eggs and larvae on me. Look at that, there's so many of them. And one of the biggest sign of them on your plants is these what do you call it, these bite marks, usually around on the leaf. They're these little dots. So that's the first sign. But first of all, if you have an alocasia, look at this one. This is a new leaf and it's already getting contaminated. So I actually do need to treat the plants around where this plant used to be. Like in one area, I need to treat all of them with spider mites because they do spread rather fast. Usually they are also more prolific indoors because there's no biological control, there's no predators. Outdoors, actually, it's very rare to get them. My dad actually just bought this plant, so it was probably already infested when he got it. But usually when they're living outside, the spiders and other types of predatory bugs do feed on these mites, so the population would usually be kept in check. But in this case, this has gone way too far. So I'm going to be treating this. First of all, I'm going to be hosing it down. If you're living indoors, you can also use the shower nozzles. And don't forget also the patio, because they can live on the patio as well, the lower stem here. Okay, so now when you look at the leaf, it's pretty clean. I don't see any more of those buggers. But then the damage is done and you will not get healthy leaves back. Usually I would say if the leaf is way too damaged, I would say cut it off. But because we're doing a demonstration on this leaf, and also because I feel like this leaf is still photosynthesizing, it's still more than half healthy. I usually cut leaves off when there's 50% damage on the leaves. So this is doing okay. I did spray this down as well. So I'm gonna leave this on, I'm not gonna cut it. But in your case, I would advise you to probably cut it off, like right down here. And then the new leaf for the alocasia, because this is the secondary leaf, the newest one, the new leaf will come from this here. Right, so in my hand here, I have the plant soap that I make. And stop asking me if I can ship it to your country because I can't. So this is only available for Indonesians. It's on my Tokopedia page at 7 Stages. And if you want to make your own or commission someone in your area to make this soap, I do have that details. I don't have the exact recipe, but I have the ingredients listed. Any soap maker would know how to make this. So this is formulated specifically for soap, for plants. And this is for insecticidal purposes. It's made with coconut oil. It's got neem oil, peppermint, and activated charcoal in it. That's why it's black in color. So this is all natural, and I don't use any plastic for delivery. There's no synthetics, there's no fragrance. So this is perfect for plants that are troubled, like in this case. So I'm gonna soap this down. Any eggs and larvae would be easily washed off with this. And technically speaking, I do want to repeat this after about a week's time because I do want to break the life cycle of the spider mites. As you can see, the infestation just now was really bad. So yeah, this is one way to do it. Don't know if you have any insecticidal soaps in your region. Do look it up. You'll be surprised by some of the options that you may have in your area to use. So there's that. I'm gonna rinse this off. Forgot to turn this on. Again, if you don't have this, you can use any kind of insecticidal spray. You can use neem oil, chemicals. There's so many things in your area. So do check with your plant store or garden store or other plant hobbies to find out what they're using for pest control. All alocasias will have spider mites, and all Hoyas will have mealybugs, and Sansevieras will have scale. That's just the fact of of being a plant parent. You're just gonna have to deal with these things. And if you let it become a habit, it becomes pretty enjoyable. If you can't tell, I'm actually having a blast right now. No pun intended. Alright, so I hope that that's helpful for you guys. I'm at botanist on Instagram if you want to DM me on any questions regarding plant care and propagations. I'll try my best to get back to you. Meanwhile, do take care and stay safe. I will see you in the next video. Bye!